section, we're going to be talking about functions, collaboration, and this is going to be very interesting because we're going to be building a game, or we're going to mimic the building of one important game. So, what is function collaboration? I mean, several times functions may need to depend on the results of another function to perform their tasks. So, pretty much the function that depends on another, or the one that is helping, we usually call it a helper function because it usually helps the other functions accomplish their tasks. And we'll be diving into that when building the fun game that we're about to build today. We're going to learn more about this by writing functions that will be mimicking the development of a three-cup Monte game. For those of you who have never heard about that game, the game has three cups, and one of the cups has a hidden ball, like you can see in the picture. And what the users have to do is to guess which cup has the ball. So we're going to go ahead and mimic the development of this game using functions so we can see how functions work together. So the first thing that we have to put in mind, we're going to create a variable. Since we already know how to write variables, we'll create a variable where to keep our caps. Then we'll write several functions. One of the functions is going to be shuffling our list of caps. So pretty much since we're just going to use a list, so we'll have a cap at index 0, a cap at index 1, and another cap at index 2. Just so you remember, in Python, we count from 0, then 1, then 2. So these are the only indices that we're going to be using in our development. So we'll have a function that shuffles the caps, and then we'll have another function that will be asking our users, hey, can you guess where the ball is? And then they'll use the indices. Maybe they'll say index 0 or index 1 or index 2. And then we'll check and see if they're correct or not. So we need to write another function that is going to help to check if a player is right or wrong. So given that background, let's jump onto building our function. So this is my Colab. You can go to any environment that you want to make sure that you're following what I'm doing. So what I start doing is I have to import shuffle because we're going to be using the shuffle method to shuffle our caps. And this is really common in several languages where you have to import packages that you're going to use. So here we're using shuffle from the random function. So from random, import shuffle, and we will use it later, not right now. So first, I'm going to create a variable caps, and then inside caps, I have three caps. One is empty, this is empty, and then one has a ball. And we just leave it like that. And then our first method that we're going to build is the one that is going to shuffle our caps. So I'll define shuffle caps, where we define our caps, and to take a variable of caps. And inside this function, we're going to use the shuffle method to shuffle our caps. And this method is just shuffle. And inside we have our caps. I think shuffle is new, like that. And then that will be shuffling our caps. And all we want is to return the shuffled caps. So we'll go ahead and return caps. This happens in plus, so our caps will be shuffled. So the caps that we receive back will be in a different order from the way they were handed in. And just to be sure that we're correct, we'll run these steps to make sure we're correct. Now the next function is we'll define our guess function, which would not take in anything, but it's going to ask our users for information about the guess. So I will create a guess variable, and it will be nothing. And then I'm going to make use of the while loop since I don't want people to give me anything that is not 0, 1, or 2. So I'll just go ahead and say that while the guess is not what we need, we'll keep asking for a guess. So while guess is not either 0, 1, or 2, I'm going to be asking the users to pick a number, either 0, 1, or 2. Or instead of just asking them to pick a number, we can just tell them this where the ball is. So the users will be guessing where the ball is. It is either index 0, index 1, or index 2. And since we're receiving a string, where what I'll do is turn it into an integer, because we're going to be using it later in our next function. So our next function is to check if the user's input is correct or wrong. So the users have to guess what index the ball is. And if they are correct, then we're excited about that. And if they are not, then maybe we can ask them to try again, depending on what they do. And in this case, we just use a if statement and else statement to check on what they have done. So I'll define check guess here. It will definitely take in the caps variable, which contains our caps, and it will also take in the guest index. I'll just call it our guest. Let's call it guest. Whatever they have guessed. And then here we'll do our if statement. So saying if our caps had guessed, which is going to be an index, an integer, if it is equal to ball, then they win. If it's not, then they lose. So pretty much this is what we've developed. Let's try to run it and see. We imported this package and then we created the caps in that order. And then we have all these functions created to help us. And let's run them. That's taking long.